Rise Up, Live Free?
Yeah.
Cool. Ready? Recording, Kenny? Camera one, camera two. Okay, here we go. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mistake-Free Real Estate and Rise Up, Live Free podcast. And you know what that means? That means we've got our good mate from St. Louis, Jimmy Vreeland, in the house today. Jimmy, how are you?
I am great, Mark.
So this is our quarterly recap of the Collective Genius Real Estate Mastermind. This was our Q4 meeting recap. So we met in I'd say sunny Florida, but it was actually pretty rainy and terrible weather down there, mate. But met down in the Clearwater, Tampa area, and it didn't matter that it was raining because, my goodness, it was a action-packed and talent-filled room of speakers. So we were treated there, Jimmy, to a pretty amazing display of panelists. And we're here today to break down all of those panelists for you. So we're going to give you some good news. I mean, overall, the feeling was that of extreme confidence, and we'll tell you why. Our keynote speaker for the event was Barry Habib. For those of you that are listening through Audible or on Spotify or something, if you want to pivot over to YouTube or at least pull it up later, I'd highly encourage you to do so. One of the things that we're going to do today is pull out some slide decks from some of the key presenters, and Jimmy's going to run through why our confidence is running over right now. Jimmy, what was your general takeaway? Confidence in the market?
Yeah. But I'm gonna caution everybody. If this meeting had been done at the end of 2021, we'd be saying we're bearish. So it's all relative to how you're feeling. Like, I'm excited because I believe it's a return to normalcy. And I was most nervous when the market was absolutely bonkers in 2020 and 2021. Like, every time I hit the buy button, I'm just like, uh-oh, am I going to get stuck on this one? And so I just want to caution everybody. We're not saying it's like 2020 and 2021 where we have massive 20% appreciation. But like I said, I like it that it's not like that.
Yeah. So I think confidence in market throughout any real estate cycle is kind of my theme, right? It's like understanding that even though interest rates went through the roof in 2022, they've now kind of stabilized. And obviously we'll give some predictions because everyone wants to know what are real estate interest rates going to do in 2024. We can certainly hypothesize and give what our feelings are based on the expert panelists that we heard inside the room. So let's start here, Jimmy. There was a 4-person panelist group and wanted to get your takeaways. Always good to get Bruce Norris back in the room, right?
Yep.
So we had Bruce Norris and Sean O'Toole. Bruce Norris, everyone will remember, is a real estate investor, hard money lender, and I would kind of call him an educator in the space. He puts out great content and is always there to give some sage advice on where he believes the market is. We had Sean O'Toole, who is the head of Property Radar. And those two guys, Jimmy, if you could provide some flavor. In fact, did you have slide decks pulled up for that as well?
I do, if you want to see them.
Yeah, why don't you pull that up just so you can kind of have highlighted notes for that? Because I know you always refer back to, for Bruce Norris, kind of some key takeaways there. Let's talk about what your impact was and what your thoughts are from the discussion that we heard from Bruce specifically.
Yeah, so these are slides from Bruce's presentation 2 years ago. And like, what I love about Bruce is his thoughts don't span like 60 days. His thoughts are like, hey, here's a good like 3 to 5 year outlook. But he made the point 2 years ago, and I'm just going through here, that you want me to slow down through these slides? Kind of explain them?
Yeah, well,
okay.
Just make your point. I think we can go back to the slides as relevant.
Yeah, so basically this is just a slide showing a trustee sale, which is a foreclosure, versus regular sales. So throughout the 80s, very low foreclosure sales. Once again, throughout the 90s, very low foreclosure sales. But throughout the 2000s, after the crash, wow, look at this, Mark. 2005, no trustee sales. And
Mm-hmm.
then trustee sales start going massively up, where regular sales start going down. This is the California median home price. The only time there was a dip in price is between 2007. There was it went down in 08, 09, hard out at 10, 11, 12, and then has been on the rise once again. And so Bruce's whole point is you're not going to see price damage until you see foreclosures. And 2 years ago, the way he explained it is like, you'd see a $500,000 house in California selling for $250, and everybody knew that asset was worth more than $250. But when an appraiser goes out to evaluate the value of a house, he has to take the 5 closest comps. And when the 5 closest comps are foreclosures selling at 50 cents on the dollar, the next house is now worth that. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. You know, he talks if 1 in 4 properties is a foreclosure, you can overlook it because you got 3/4 of the assets that are regular retail sales. But when the foreclosure sales become either 50% or 75%, meaning either 2 or 3 of the 4 are foreclosure sales, then you have to include those, and it actually depresses it. So to further that, let's talk about, are we seeing, we have heard about some kind of shadow wave of inventory. And one of the things that I asked Sean O'Toole directly was, are we seeing a shadow wave of inventory? Do you remember what he said?
I'm pretty sure he said no, right?
Yeah, he said, no, not at all. There is no such thing. Everyone has so much equity in their homes right now that it is not a concern that there's going to be this massive wave of foreclosures coming through the pipeline. And that's Bruce, obviously, was seconding that notion. So strong reports from them. We also had Kevin Baldridge on.
Well,
if you want to, sorry,
Mark,
go
let
ahead.
me just go through this slide real quick. And then, so here's what I'll tell you on the street. We run a foreclosure process on the wholesaling side. And what we have found is by running this foreclosure process, we are helping more people stay in their homes than actually getting deals, because, we'll call the bank and the banks want to renegotiate. So check out this slide. It looks like, foreclosure starts are on the rise. Here comes the shadow inventory, Mark. But look at foreclosure finishes. For a bank to actually foreclose now, you have to just ignore them. That's what we found on the street, like going on this foreclosure process, is the seller or the homeowner continues to ignore the bank. And once we get on the phone with them, the bank's like, we don't want to foreclose. We want to renegotiate. And so don't look at foreclosure starts. Look at foreclosure finishes, and foreclosure finishes are stalled out just like they were in 2020.
Yeah, I think people realize that, there's so much equity in these homes that, people can just sell to get out of them if needed. Secondarily, I think the banks are realizing that they are not good at owning real estate. And, really, they just want to let people keep in their homes and get paid. And so loan modifications, to your point, become a larger asset class or larger sample size than the actual finished foreclosures.
And then the other thing, what happened in 08, when they foreclosed on everyone and dropped asset values massively, that didn't do anything for their balance sheet either.
No, it didn't. And one of the things that did happen back in the day was, there was back in 2000, 10, 11, 12, there was no major impact, or at least there was no level of sophistication from large hedge funds, REITs, and power buyers that were coming in and trying to accumulate tens of thousands of properties. But now there is. And if you are, trying to, and in fact, that's pivoting to our next person that was on the panel, was a COO of Tricon Homes, who has 38,000 homes under management. And if there's even a 5 or 10% dip, that's going to be a massive, propensity for them to come in and start buying up en masse, because they're buying in any market, right, Jimmy?
Yep.
So their portfolio right now is around 37,000 homes, stabilized single-family rentals. One of the takeaways I took away from him was that he was so heavily focused on on 2 things. One was they really look at demographic as well as location. People say location when you're buying real estate, but the propensity to pay was one of the things that he mentioned. And that is basically looking at a demographic. How likely are they to pay their rent on time? I mean, it sounds so obvious, but for those that are looking at C-class and B- assets, you know, the propensity to pay in a downturn is going to be stark compared to those A and B assets that are in nice neighborhoods where the propensity to pay is going to be extremely high, even in a downturn. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that they are so focused on their resident experience. You know, everyone thinks that it's, you know, renting from a corporate landlord like Tricon is, you know, a bad thing. I'm the opposite. I'm thinking they are going to get so dialed in with their AI and their automations that it will be a wonderful experience for a resident because there's such high level of professionalism. So that was my takeaway. Thoughts?
I agree with that completely. I think they have the cash and the HR department to really make a powerful resident experience where they'll destroy any mom and pop like counting pennies.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point where, I mean, just as an example, for the audience that's listening, they are monitoring through AI the time it takes for a vacant home to reduce the thermostat from 85 degrees down to 70 degrees in the summer. Therefore, knowing that if it takes a little bit longer than normal, they may need to go either change the filter or have the thing serviced or try to boost up, get some more Freon in the air conditioning unit. I mean, it's that level of sophistication and automation. This is not so that they can get better at sending out text. So it's almost like they're going to know the problems in their houses before the residents even do. Yeah,
that's huge. My takeaway, Mark, from Kevin was they wanted to buy 7,500 houses this year, but they only bought 1,700. I've been somewhat of a contrarian that high interest rates are, I think high interest rates have been good for investors as far as how would I say this? It's definitely better for newbie investors, and it's definitely been better for non-institutional investors because what's the thing that did concern me for our investors, our buyers, is Kevin did say once rates go down to 6, they're jumping back in. And so I've been saying 2023 was the calm before the storm, before the funds just go ballistic again. And so if you want to get into owning real estate, like now is the time. And so that is something I do think rates are going to go down this year. And that is something I do have my eyes on as far as, is there going to be opportunity still for the mom and pop investor?
Yeah, no doubt. It's getting harder and harder for sure. I think those that are trying to DIY it are really getting beat out because there's so much level of sophistication in the market. He wouldn't tell us. The one interesting thing about Kevin, and the reason he didn't tell us is, you know, they are a publicly traded company and there was some legal action against their firm based from some, like I think it was either Charlotte or, you know, one of those markets in the Carolinas that was suing them because they were putting out so many offers. I think if he said they could so their level of sophistication on the acquisition side was that within 5 minutes, their AI technology was going to be able to script out a house, analyze it for not only the propensity to pay, the demographic that would like to live there, what am I trying to say? The ROI, effectively, effectively pulling out a pro forma, the financials on the house as well, and then put in an offer within 5 minutes. And so they're scripting through that just on thousands and thousands and thousands of homes a day all over America. So if you're in one little market, clearly that's you're going to have this conglomerate putting in hundreds of offers in your local market every single day and make it extremely hard to, even compete with these cash offers that are coming in. So again, the level of sophistication on the buy side is going to mean it's way, way, way harder for someone that's just trying to say, I only want to go and buy 1 or 2 homes this year. It should be easy for me. No, it's not. It's going to be extremely hard. Is that fair?
That's a great point. That's an excellent point.
So yeah, so the panel went really, really well. We should not overstep. I know it's probably less relevant, but do you have any takeaways from Daniel Marcos? It's always great to get Daniel Marcos. He came in and talked a lot about mindset, talking about the difference between strategic thinking and executive planning. Because people always talk about, well, we have a strategic planning session. It's like, no. You either have strategic thinking or executive planning. Like these are two mutually exclusive things that sometimes get hubbubbed and muddled together. What any takeaways from your on what Daniel brought to the table?
Yeah, he said all individual KPIs should be negotiated.
For your team, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I implemented this annual planning session. And I was just like, oh, I've been a little autocratic on here. It's like, hey, here's what the business needs. Here's your KPIs. Go get them. And, that results in lack of buy-in.
Yeah, no, it was a great session. Obviously more on the team base, probably not as relevant to those. Well, I shouldn't say that. We got a lot of business owners focused. Anyone who's interested, Scaling Up continues to be a Bible that I go back to. So for anyone who's wondering, where I go to for questions on people, strategy, execution, or cash flow, Scaling Up, the book by Vern Harnish, is a wonderful purple Bible that we reference all the time in our office. Even going back to simple things like, just onboarding talent, explaining, the BHAG and why it's important, and the brand promise, and how to differentiate yourself. He talked about owning the ink, and owning the ink in your space. Before you can dominate a space, you've got to own the ink in that space. And that really means thinking through, if someone did a Google, I want to invest in real estate, does Jimmy Vreeland pop up, as one of the people that could help them do so? Valid points. But yeah, really interesting there. I'm always a fan. He said the one big thing to ask yourself is what's not going to change in the future. I think real estate is a big part of that, Jimmy. What's not in your mind when I say that, ask you that question with regard to real estate? What is, because everyone's like, oh, sales prices are going up and down potentially, and interest rates are going up and down, and hedge funds are coming in and out of the market. But what is not going to change in the future?
The human need for food, water, and shelter.
It'll always be there. And I think the reason that you're starting to hear rumblings, and this is something we can maybe go deep on in the next session, but have you been hearing these like government level discussions about trying to outlaw, like Blackstone used to be oh, that's so great, look at what a great successful American company it is, and now it's like these evil people that are taking away all of these rentals. That's only going to be a snowball that picks up more momentum when it's running down the hill. What are your thoughts on the government's intervention into trying to control who can and cannot own real estate?
Can I back you up a second and give you a economic American history, not lesson, but just story?
No, always.
Okay, so John D. Rockefeller, there's a great book called Titan. It's fascinating. Like, he's been vilified as this horrible monopolist, right? And so, he's regarded as a bad guy in American history, and I love the guy. And so same thing happened with him. He found a way to produce oil very efficiently, very cheaply for the consumer. And of course, people got angry about it because envy's always out there. So he got too big and the government came after him. The government made him break up Standard Oil, right? And thinking like, we're going to get this rich guy, this monopolist. And do you think making him break up his conglomerate, do you think it made him poorer or richer?
The obvious answer would be poorer, but I have seen the movie, so.
Yeah, it made him completely more wealthier, that they made him break up his conglomerate, and then everything became more expensive, worse for the consumer. So no, you never want to get too big that you become a target for, those who want to take down the man. I think you want to, wherever the line is where you're the man and you're the system, you want to stay right below that line.
I love it. Yeah, so the media and the government in general is now kind of turning its head on these conglomerates. So we'll have to kind of watch and see what happens. On the line of the media, Jimmy, I'm really getting to the point, and maybe, I don't know if it's old age or if the media is getting worse, but I'm realizing now how manipulative and one-sided the media is. I'm certainly losing faith in all kinds of media. I know you're a skeptic. Where did your skepticism or distrust of the media come from?
I mean, from my deployments. We would occasionally be on a mission that would hit the news and it would be completely false, completely wrong. They would just completely be wrong. And like the reporter would be with us in the helicopter. And I'd be like, bro, like, that's not what happened. What are you talking about? And then, so eventually, like my third deployment, I'm like, we got to keep these guys away from me.
Frustrating. How do you think that relates to the credibility of those, and do you want to pull up, I think let's
let's pull that up in a second, but let's take a step back to what the media is. Like, the media says, hey, we can be trusted, and that, we preserve a dialogue that creates a free society. That's their narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but that's their own self-created narrative. No one else is validating that for them. They've just said, hey, throughout American history, we've been able to create this dialogue. And another history lesson for today's podcast, like, the American media has always been corrupt. It doesn't upset me. Like, here's an example. Benjamin Franklin, I forget his last name, like Bach. Yeah, Benjamin Franklin Bach. He owned, so you had the Federalists with like Hamilton and Washington, right? And he had Jefferson and Madison, who were the Democrat Republicans. And so Benjamin Franklin Bach, Benjamin Franklin's grandson, he ran Thomas Jefferson's newspaper, right? And so the media has always been so bad, and was so bad after the Revolutionary War, but that by George Washington's 8th year in office, they were reporting that George Washington was really a British operative. And that, like, really, you're unbelievable, right?
Yeah, I never heard that.
Really happened. They're saying that George Washington fought an 8-year war as a double agent British spy to just create a federal government that would then work for the British. But, this is the legacy that the media lives under. And so I think it's us as Americans who are a little naive to trust these people.
Yeah.
So
well, I think you're seeing the rise of the podcast, right? You're seeing the Joe Rogans and Patrick Bet-Davids of the world and Tucker Carlson's that are kind of coming out and speaking truth, rising in popularity, rising in, and the more that they can monetize the podcast, now you're seeing where the ability, even the Daily Wire, you're seeing news sources that are coming out that are just, trying to be, and they're alternative. They're not on TV, but with all our streaming services now, you're watching them like they are. It's certainly bucking the curve a little bit.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson talks about all the time that it's the medium is the message, but this the legacy media, it's clearly on its way out because there's just too much competition.
Yeah.
But do you want to bring up the latest example of?
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, while you're bringing that up, let me give it some flavor for those listening. And we've got to get to Barry Habib, because Barry Habib, for those that have not heard, was our keynote speaker. He's the CEO of MBS Highway. He's an American entrepreneur and kind of a frequent media resource for his mortgage and housing expertise. And we were lucky enough to get him live and in person in Clearwater, Florida. He's a 3-time Crystal Ball Award winner, which basically means that he puts his confidence out. He's confidently speaking what he believes will happen in the future, and then he gets ranked on it. So he has extreme credibility because he was not afraid to say what's going to happen and then back himself up. During his presentation, however, and he even said that this lady is not a bad person, but she is not held accountable. Jimmy, I'll let you take it from there. We're talking about a media member that has been, over the years talking about housing and putting this scare narrative in the minds of the public that if you're watching CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, any of these, Fox News, any of these big channels, and you get their so-called experts on there, it's fear-mongering. And it was incredible to the way he had put the slide deck together. If you want to detail it, Jimmy.
Yeah. Do you remember what this person's name is?
No, would rather not say.
Okay. Anywho, I love sports, Mark, but I hate sports media, right? And so this is from Ray Dalio. It's called a credibility index. But I think every sports prognosticator who makes a prediction, every business prognosticator who makes a prediction, just like a baseball player when he comes up to bat, you see his batting average, right? Anytime a predictor in the media is predicting something, they should have their credibility index on the screen, just like a baseball
batting
player.
Average. Yeah.
Correct. That would be one, that could help the legacy media be more interesting and make a comeback. And two, I think it would lead to better information. So let's just go through the last 10 years of this prognosticator's predictions. You want to do that? Play this game?
Yeah. So this so the headline for those listening at home, it said housing bubble fears. And so this is like breaking news. And this is one of those headlines you would see with the big red breaking news banner on the bottom. But Barry broke it down. If you want to roll out the first one, I think it was all the way back to 2015. So these are just some of her headlines that came out. So, and he took this saying, okay, at this time, he took a home, just a general home. The average sales price of a home was $400,000. And her headline here was housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. So she's putting the fear in the market. The bubble larger than 2006. Beware, don't buy real estate. Okay. Next headline, Jimmy.
Well, wait, you were around at this time. What happened to housing in 2015? Do you have a good year or bad year in 2015, Mark?
Had a great year.
That's because housing went up 5%.
But now housing goes up 5%. And she says, wait, we must be in a new housing bubble. So this is now a year later. She's saying the same thing. So what happened the next year?
Another 5%.
Housing went up 5% again.
Okay, 17. This is where I start getting in the game. And I remember seeing these headlines. This made me nervous as a business owner, right? Home ownership doesn't build wealth, study finds.
A new study finds that home ownership does not build wealth. Again, this is this one same lady that he pulled these headlines from.
And hey, I'm sure if you torture the data long enough, it'll tell you whatever you want. So I'm sure somebody tortured some data here. Oh, and another 16% in 17, right?
Yep. Let's go another year. It's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. And hey, in 2018, you're looking at it. She's probably thinking, hey, look, we've had 8 years of a bull run after the market. She's just always, what did you say earlier about one of the people in our group that if you're a pessimist,
if you're a perma bear and you're always predicting doom and gloom, and once doom and gloom. So this is what stunk about 08. You had all these perma bears, 30-year perma bears who the economy finally crashed. And they're like, see, I was right. But it wasn't like 18 months prior to that. They were like, hey, this is the time.
Yeah.
And, 20 years before that, they had said, oh no, we're still in a bull market.
Yeah.
So if you're always a perma bear and there's finally a crash, you're not right. That's why perma bears exist.
Yeah. So 2018, it's better to rent than to buy. What did real estate do in 2018?
I had an awesome year in 18. What about you?
Let's have a look at what they did globally. We had a great year as well. Another 5%. Weird.
All right. Maybe 19, she'll have a better attitude, right?
You would think. The housing market is about to shift in a bad way for buyers. Sounds like this lady just never wants she must be a stock market person because she never wants people to buy housing.
Right. 19, awesome for me. What about you guys?
Had a great year.
Another 4%.
Another 4%.
Maybe we had an off year by 1%. Okay. So maybe after 19, she's convinced and she's a believer, right?
Next year will be hard on the housing market, especially in these big cities, is the headline. So now it's like, okay, now in the big cities, watch out. Don't be buying in the big cities. So every year from 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and now in December of 2019, next year is going to be hard on housing. And hey, she should have been right because COVID hits, right? But it went up 10% in the year 2019, right before COVID. And then the last headline he's got on here is what?
Oh, we got two more of this torture. So after a 10% bump in the government printing, the printing presses are end of 2020. We were still like, oh my God, it's go time, right? I remember at CG, it's the first time I heard John Burns be bullish.
Yeah.
Okay, so even the printing press is hot. Things are going. You would think that would get her off the bear side, right? Housing boom is over. New home sales fall to pandemic low. And
it's just not factual. It's just crazy. And what did the market do in that time? Unbelievable.
20%.
19% increase. So now that home value that started at 400,000 through all of these from 2015 to 2021, and people saw this. Anyone who owned real estate during that time period, they saw it. It's gone from 400 to 668,000, that same house. Unbelievable.
So what is that? It's 6 years. This is if you paid cash for that house. It's a 55% return.
Yeah.
Yeah, 55% return. If you use leverage, it's a 200% return.
Yeah.
Like this lady's hurting people.
You got another headline here, or is this the
Oh,
end of
yeah.
the pain?
So interest rates went up. This was time for a new 08, right, Mark?
New 2008. Why the housing market is increasingly big trouble, she says in March of 2022.
And in 23, it went up another 6%.
Another 6%. Look, at the end of the day, she's and here's the thing. They keep touting her out there just being the doom and gloomer. And one day she may be right. There may be, you know, a correction, but I wouldn't bet against the champ.
Do you want to go to that slide next?
I mean, come on, let's bring it out, because I think people need to understand how the housing market is feared. You know, the danger here would be for someone to say, you know, well, markets, it continues to go up. It continues to go up. So clearly, you know, what goes up must come down. And I think that is such a false narrative when it comes to the housing market. You know, go back and ask your grandparents or your parents what they paid for their house back when they first started. Real estate through inflation does continue to go up in value. And Barry Habib brought out a slide that he likes to call "Don't Bet Against the Champ." And he goes all the way back to, I think, 1940, is it?
Yeah, sorry. Susie hates it when on video. I just ripped through slides. So yeah, hold on, let me find the slide
deck. But yeah, there's a study that, well, not a study. I mean, Barry just compiled all of the data and put together a one slide deck that shows how many years in the last 74 years the housing market has actually gone down in value. And for those of you sitting there at home and listening, give that a number. How many years do you think that the housing market has not gone up in value and has actually gone down? Because Mark, I can tell you now, it's very few.
I have a better question for you.
Hit me.
The S&P 500 and 75 years of data. How many years has that gone down? Of the houses in the S&P 500, or of the businesses in the S&P 500, how many have been around for 75 years?
Out of 500, how many have been around for 75 years?
Yeah.
20?
No.
Not even?
1, GE.
What?
Yeah, bro. So like when everybody's the stock market's so stable and good, you know, good for the long term, it's like they're also cherry picking their data. They're not eliminating all the businesses that have gone out of business.
Yeah.
All right. I found the slide. I apologize for you, the visual people on here, for the sliding through the slide so fast. Maybe
right,
Kenny can cut that. All right, here it is, Mark. Don't bet against the champ.
All right, so just for those listening, since 1941, this is just factual data from Case Shiller of how many times what the annual rate of return on real estate is in the last 81 years.
I did believe this is the median home price.
The increase in percentage change of the median home price.
Yes, sir.
What did I say?
Not that. I don't remember.
So so whether the percentage change or percentage increase or decrease of the median home price in the market. So here we have, since 1942, it has only gone down 6 times out of 81. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Unbelievable. And clearly, I mean, 5 of them were during the GFC.
Yeah, which was not a real estate crisis. I've come to the conclusion it was a fraud crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. A banking and financial crisis based on the lending, the predatory lending.
But here's something else for all investors worried about a recession. Let's go through the recessions in the United States history. So first of all, let's go through the last time there was hyperinflation. So the last, my parents bought their first house when I was born, 1979, at a 12% interest rate. Owner finance, 12%. And interest rates were skyrocketing at this point. So, the reason you study history is so you can learn from the past. Would you have expected, with skyrocketing interest rates in the late 70s, for prices to go down, Mark?
With interest rates going up?
Well, I think the interest rate was something like 12 or 13%. I mean, we're complaining right now about 7.
You would think, yeah, exactly. It would.
That's not what happened. 77, up 15, 78, up 16, 79. 14, then old Dutch Reagan comes in here, starts providing some discipline. You would think that would have crashed the economy. The economy suffered in 80 and 81, but real estate still went up 7 and another 5%.
Yep.
When we were kids, we were like 10 years old. Was there a recession after the Gulf War in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a recession. We win the Gulf War. Hooray, America.
Yeah.
There's a mild recession. Everybody's whining. This is when Kurt Cobain and Eddie Vedder come out and grunge, and everybody's crying. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Not real estate investors. Still 1 up, 1 and 2% and 3%. So even grunge couldn't take down real estate, Mark. Now the other great recession, the tech bubble, 7, 10, 10, 14, 14.
Yeah.
So you could, real estate is almost hasn't, I'm not going to say it's a directly inverse relationship to the rest of the economy, but it definitely is not linear.
Yeah. I mean, the only area of flat was really in the 50s, right? Where right after World War II, the nuke gets dropped on Japan, and from the late 40s, you obviously see a massive bump up there in 50 and 52. But then there's pretty stagnant growth between 0 and 1, 2%. So look, even if you say that, that there's some kind of, stagnation of appreciation that would be coming through the pipeline, I just don't see there being any fear of real estate tanking, at least in 24, 25.
The other interesting thing is, since we came off the gold standard in 73, you had flatline growth throughout the 50s when we were still in the gold standard. After the gold standard, it's clearly a 4 to 5% bump every year.
Yeah.
Followed by some bigger bumps of multiple 10% years.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Yeah. Don't bet against the champ, Mark.
Don't bet against the champ. Other takeaways from Barry Habib.
Do you want? Oh yeah, there's one other slide. Let me find it so I'm not wrecking everybody's eyes ripping through slides. But let's go through the slide of population growth versus inventory. You and me for a year have been harping on the whole, hey, there's not enough inventory out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that Don Wenner, one of our guest panelists, talked about was how affordability is directly related to supply. And until there is excess supply, affordability is going to be an issue. But the only thing that would really correct affordability at this point moving forward is going to be some major tech changes in construction. And that is coming through the pipeline. For those that are paying attention, and I'm not going to go deep on it today, but there are companies out there that are trying to build not using wood, which is extremely ineffective and inefficient. It's easy and repeatable, but there are other ways to do it. And so I think in the next decade or two, there's going to be some disruption in construction methodologies. But let's talk about population versus inventory, Jimmy.
Okay, so Barry did a great reel. I saw this probably 3 or 4 months ago. He did a great reel on this about why, hey, you're in a solid position if you're investing in real estate. So let's take a look back to the Great Recession. 2007, our population was just over 300 million, right?
Yep.
Our inventory of houses was above 4 million. So there was plenty of houses for the current population. There's other slides in there we could show how we probably overbuilt in the early 2000s. But since that redheaded lady's been on CNBC scaring people for the last 15 years, everybody forgot to buy houses. Build houses. So now our population is up 35 million and our inventory is down 3 million.
Yeah, so that delta, if you're not looking on camera, just to give you some stats again, the population has gone from 300 million to 335 million, and the inventory has gone from 4 million down to almost 1 million. So we've had a 75% reduction in inventory. At the same time, you've seen a 10-15% increase in population.
So if you're looking just basic supply and demand, it's like, this is a very simple chart. Like, real estate is a solid place to store your wealth and build your wealth.
Yeah, my takeaways from Barry, there's just multiple reasons. I think too many people, one stat that people may get shocked by, a 1% drop in interest rates, there are 5 million more people qualified to buy a home. I had not heard that stat before. Had you?
No, but that is absolutely fascinating. And for investors, rates dropped what, 1.5 in the last 6 weeks. So
Correct.
how many more million buyers are out there right now?
Yeah. I mean, and that's from the National Association of Realtors. For every 1% drop in interest rate, 5 million more buyers become qualified to buy. And for those, let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the final thing, the 4 reasons to buy despite higher interest rates, which Barry certainly backed up our last podcast when you and I were talking about it. But one of the things that he mentioned was, what is going to happen to interest rates? Everyone's like, Barry, what's going to happen to interest rates? And he gave us like just literal odds. He said, the first reduction. So he talked about March, May, and June, as far as like the Fed meeting. In March 20th, it is likely, meaning about a 40% chance that they will get their first reduction. On May 1st, it's probable, meaning a 75% chance that they will do a rate reduction. By June 12th, it is a certainty that they will do a rate reduction, a 91%. So again, he comes at it from a very statistical analysis point, but we're likely to see, and I saw something the other day, Jimmy, that was kind of stark. I mean, you've got all these banks coming out and guessing from a minimum of a 75 basis point reduction all the way to a 2.5% basis point reduction is what the big banks are guessing.
Yep.
However, I tend to lean on what Barry's saying, which is probably a 75 basis point reduction, meaning that interest rates will come down from their current mark by around almost 1%, or about 75 basis points. So encouraging there, because I think we've stabilized to a point where interest rates is becoming less of an objection for buyers. Do you see the same thing?
I think it's not. What do you mean? Retail buyers?
Retail buyers, yeah, just fix and
hold?
flip. Yeah, long-term buy and hold. It's becoming less of an objection, what we see because again, we're talking about investors buying in the 6s and 7s still, without any help. What we're seeing is the retail buyers easily getting in the high 5s. And I think that's so unobjectionable now that it's pretty easy for them to pull the trigger.
Well, there's going to be redheaded people on CNBC then complaining again that prices are too high. So, I've become completely agnostic to whatever the rates are doing, because we didn't see a slowdown from our retail side, from retail buyers. We didn't see a slowdown for our investors buyers for 2023. My concern is for the FHA retail buyer and the new person wanting to be getting in investing. When rates go down, are there still going to be houses for them? That's like my legit concern.
Yeah. Well, and the hedge funds are going to come in and buy as much as they can. You and I are obviously scaling operations to try and buy as much as we can. I mean, there's a legit concern that, that there will be fewer and fewer rentals.
Well, no, there's going to be more rentals. There's going to be less opportunities for first-time home buyers and really first-time investors.
Yeah, sorry. More first. When I said let's rentals to buy as an investor. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. There's going to be more and more rentals for sure because of first-time home buyer. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Couple things. Barry also mentioned that the recession will come now based on unemployment. So it's currently 3.7%. It has to get over 4% before we will hit a recession. He doesn't expect that will happen, but when this happens, mortgage rates will decline and the real estate market will do well. He actually said, guys, you are fine. Real estate does well in a recession. So even if
rents do fine in a recession.
And rentals and rental rates do well in recessions. Exactly. Now, I will come back to operations. Operational excellence in managing properties is going to be at the forefront of everything that we're doing. But yeah, to that end. Do you have time to run through the 4 reasons with me here of why he still says to buy? I know we've run long.
I always have time for you, Mark.
All right. So my takeaway, here's what he gave: 4 reasons to buy despite higher rates. Now, again, this is probably leaning more to a retail buyer, but I think for a real estate investor, it's important to understand why higher interest rates should not stop their mentality. And so I'll take it kind of from his approach of retail, Jimmy, and then if you want to bring it back and land the plane as far as what investors should be thinking when they're buying, here are the 4 reasons. The first one is a blended rate. He said, remember that, part of what mortgage companies are doing now is helping with debt consolidation. So even a 6%, no, it's not 3%, But if you go and buy a house, a lot of people are either buying or refining using debt consolidation through the mortgage at 6%. So you've got car loans, student loans, and credit cards that are all 10% plus that people are using using the mortgage to buy that down and pay it off. So debt consolidation equals a blended interest rate that's still lower than what they had been paying, which is helping people. The second reason, he said, explain cumulative gains on appreciation to them. Now, when we talked earlier about the negative headlines that this lady was falsely projecting, we also said how interest rate went up by where the average median sales price of a home was going up by 5%, 6%, 10%, 4%, 5%, just continually going up. And the accumulation gains with appreciation, people don't see it in their pocket and sometimes ignore it. And I think this is a big one for real estate investors, is they ignore the cumulative appreciation. If you're not looking and updating your balance sheet as well as your P&L, you're going to miss the plot, because your net worth is increasing every year that you own real estate, and it has nothing to do with your P&L. The third one is the cost of waiting. It's a math exercise. If you wait for interest rates to come down and then turn around and start buying at a lower interest rate, what you've given up by waiting that long, if you do and he did a lengthy math exercise, which I can't do on a podcast, it is very clear that the cost of waiting is exceptionally high. And it is better to buy now with what you may call a quote unquote higher interest rate, let's call it 6 or 7%, and then refi later and enjoy the appreciation, the tax benefits, the cash flow, all of that stuff throughout there, rather than waiting for an interest rate to go down and the purchase price of your asset to have gone up while you're waiting. Lastly, the amortization schedule. Don't think rate, think wealth. He was talking about how the amortization schedule is one of the biggest reasons to buy. You have someone else paying off your mortgage for you. And when you start looking at it, again, a balance sheet exercise is to look at the amortization schedule and show the principal pay down every year from someone else paying off your mortgage. So those are the 4 reasons that I saw from him to buy despite higher rates. Jimmy, can you land the plane for us and kind of just highlight? I know you're really good at explaining the impact of higher interest rates and why that should be insignificant for real estate investors. I'll let you take that.
It comes down to leverage amplifies return. So if you put 20% and then a new home buyer, let's do an exercise. New home buyer putting 5% down and then an investor putting 20% down, and rates go up. The median home price goes up 5%. Is the home buyer's return 5%? Or what is that? Or is it, what's 5 times 20?
100.
That's not. So you put $5,000 down. Oh, it's 100% return. So let's just do simple numbers. Let's say it's a $200,000 house. You have a 5% down payment. So your down payment was $10,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the house went up $10,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your rate of return is 100%.
On your cash.
Yes.
And cash return. Yep.
Yeah. So whether you're a homeowner or an investor, you don't look at the price, the percentage for the price increase of the asset. You look on how much cash you put down and what your return is. And so, an investor, you put 20% down, house goes up 5%. What's their rate of return? So simple numbers, $100,000 rental house, you put $20,000 down, the house goes up $5,000. The return's 25%.
Yep.
So it's just like leverage amplifies returns. These 30-year fixed mortgage, golden tickets, it's the greatest debt instrument on earth. It's not Dave Ramsey credit card debt. But my approach is it's really not the real estate. It's the 30-year fixed loan. If you can get access to a 30-year fixed loan, you get as many of those as you possibly can.
Love it. Yeah. And remember, as always, guys, you can, marry the house, date the rate. The bank is forced to hold on to that for 30 years. You are not. You can choose to refi and get a lower interest rate down the road. But who knows when that's going to happen?
Have you read The Black Swan yet?
No.
That's the great point in The Black Swan, why real estate's the greatest wealth producer on earth, is at the end of the day, the bank's stuck with the asset.
It's a one-sided bet. Yeah.
Exactly. But, you and me, in the middle of the country, Mark, not on CNBC, we'll keep slugging it out, plugging away, shouting in the darkness. And keep playing this game. As I really think we are the bastard stepchildren of the investing world.
Well, I think it's our job to put that out there, Jimmy, that, real estate is as safe as it comes as an investment vehicle, and more people should be doing it.
I could not agree with you more.
So there it is, guys. CG recap, our highlights from the event. And it was a bullish one. I think everyone is, walking into 2024 with extreme confidence, just knowing that if you have good dialed in operations, and I'll say the reason that I think CG members are coming away extremely confidently is not necessarily just because we're getting this message now. What Jimmy said earlier, it's because we've been focusing so long. We've been, hoarding some cash. We've been dialing in our operations. We've been working on our property management practices, like our systems and operations, and the cadence of how we're actually, running our businesses is getting so much more solid that now that we have some runway to be a little bit more aggressive and not have to worry about, where real estate heads is why we're confident. Is that fair?
That's very fair, but my attitude is like, I really don't care about what the market's doing. I want to pursue operational excellence.
Exactly.
Because there's always opportunity at any cycle of the market, as long as you're excellent at whatever you do.
In any profession.
Yeah. I mean, as a dad, I want to pursue excellence, as a husband, as a friend, all of it. But, think about it, like with a friendship. Oh, my friend's being nice to me this week. Like, okay, it's okay to do this. It's like, no, the ability to be a friend is your good times and bad times. Like, here's what I know. Good times are coming and bad times are coming. I'm completely agnostic. I don't care.
I get it. Well, don't bet against the champ. Real estate is here, active and for sale. If you guys have, for those of you that are listening or have been forwarded on this podcast from someone, remember that our two companies, Vreeland Capital and SBD Housing, you can, we'll put some links in this dash. You can always reach out to us to begin your real estate journey. We believe that real estate is best bought and never sold, that you should be buying and holding assets once you have the financial ability to do so. It's your job to go out there and earn with excellence in what you're doing in your profession, but then turn around and take that capital and deploy it into the greatest wealth building tool that you can, which is real estate. Jimmy, final words before we sign off?
I just had an incredible idea so that we put our money where our mouth is, but we should get AI. We've been doing, what do you think we've done doing this podcast like last 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
We should get AI to remove any predictions we've made and see if we were right. And then so we should be posting our credibility index.
Get a batting average. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Goal for next time.
Yep.
Well, hey, thanks so much. Appreciate you guys listening. As always, give us a on YouTube, give us a subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when these future podcasts will be coming out. But signing off from the Mistake for Real Estate podcast and Rise Up Live Free podcast, this is Jimmy and Mark saying, see you later.
See you guys.
Lengthy.